Howdy everyone, welcome back to another review on my channel. Today we're going to take a look at the new Indiana Jones movie. It is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and this is a movie that I have been expecting for a long time. I really wanted to watch this movie because I've been a really big fan of Indiana Jones. He's like one of my favorite characters, one of my favorite franchises. I grew up with Harrison Ford playing Indiana Jones since the very beginning, and I gotta say the original trilogy for me is the best. I love those movies. I watched them so many times, and I actually like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I know that movie gets a lot of like criticism, and even if the movie is different, I think it has its place in the franchise, and I felt the same way about Dial of Destiny. And today we're going to take a look at the movie and I'll explain why I felt this way. So there's a couple things that I also have to add for context. So this is the last Indiana Jones movie, and I think it provides a very special closure for the character. And before I go further ahead, I'm going to warn that I'm going to go into spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie, please skip ahead. But the movie is a send off to the character, and no, he doesn't die, which is something we'll get to later, especially with the ending. But I think that this movie did a lot of great things for Indiana Jones. I think the way the film took the character and his journey throughout all these movies and made the best out of it was really well presented. And especially, I feel like Harrison Ford had a blast making this movie. Honestly, I felt like his character in Star Wars Han Solo was very disrespected in episode 7. So I was afraid that would happen like the same way in this movie, but I was surprised at how well it was handled by Disney and by the new Indiana Jones movie. I feel like it did a lot of good things, and it also expanded on the lore from the previous movie. So some of the characters have come back, some others are not back. For example, his son, which, you know, it explains why he's not in this movie. So going with the plot, this movie picks up a couple decades after the last movie, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and now it's kind of like the Vietnam era. So Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was in the 50s after World War II, and this movie picks up over a decade later, which coincides with the, you know, the release of the last movie compared to this one. And Indiana Jones is much older in the movie. So Harrison Ford, I think he's over 80 years old, and he still kicks ass in this movie. Don't get me wrong. I feel like it does a lot of good things with that. And I was surprised to see that. It feels good to see Indiana Jones doing all these stunts, basically going back to those original scenes in the original trilogy. I feel like it captures a lot of the spirit of Indiana Jones, especially like in the beginning where he's being chased through a parade and he has to hop on a horse and he goes through the parade. I feel like that scene was really well done, and there's a lot of scenes throughout the movie with that, and especially with the new characters, and especially like for example his goddaughter, which takes a really important role in the movie, Indiana Jones's goddaughter. And it just leads to really good scenes then, and I gotta say, like, the action is still the same as before. Also, the special effects are really well done. I especially want to talk about a scene in the beginning. So basically, we're heading towards a future where movies make a lot more use of CGI. They make use of especially artificial intelligence for many purposes. And this is something that I've talked about before because it's been done in the past, and I feel like there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. For example, wrong way would be, for example, like Luke's character in The Mandalorian. So the way they used artificial intelligence and CGI in those scenes, I thought it felt really bad. Like, honestly, I like seeing those scenes again. It looks like Luke Skywalker. Like, it doesn't look like Mark Hamill. It feels like this CGI puppet just plastered on the face of an actor, and it just doesn't look natural. It looks really bad. And basically, another like really recent example is in The Flash, where The Flash had a lot of cameos, but just the way they recreated the faces of some previously deceased actors. For example, Christopher Reeve as the Superman that comes back. Also, spoilers for The Flash, I guess. But that movie did really awful use of CGI, of basically like recreating or like making characters younger. But also there are good examples for this. Like, I'm not saying I'm against technology being used like this. I just feel like it has to, you know, like seem right and seem natural. So for example, in Avengers Endgame and the Ant-Man movies, Michael Douglas's character gets de-aged in order to make him look younger, and it looks really good in those scenes. It looks natural. It looks like basically they do it for a single scene. Another example is Robert De Niro in Martin Scorsese's last film, The Irishman, and I guess Indiana Jones did the same thing. So there's a very extended sequence in the beginning. It lasts like half an hour, but it does really great use of, you know, Harrison Ford de-aged to look like a young Indiana Jones. Also, it felt respectful to the character. For example, it didn't feel like a cash grab. It makes the audience really enjoy this character, and like the sequence is also really fun. It just reminds me of like classic Indiana Jones. It's really well shot, really well directed, and that entire sequence just made me feel young again watching the original trilogy, and it just flowed so well. And it just doesn't make you realize like the whole movie's going to be like this. It's only one sequence, kind of like to pay homage to the character, and it just feels really good. And that's something I enjoyed, is that specific scene in the beginning. So then there's a time skip. Over the rest of the movie, we see the older Indiana Jones basically getting involved in this adventure with the Dial of Destiny. We'll talk about that later, but I also want to focus on some of the other side characters. So one of the main new characters in this movie is Indy's goddaughter, Helena Shaw, which plays a central role in the movie. She's kind of like this thief, and she serves a daughter figure for Indy in this film, kind of like the same way Shia LaBeouf's character served as like Indiana Jones' son in the last movie, kind of like person who's mentored by this legendary character. And also going to take a small detour to explain what happened to Shia LaBeouf's character. So basically, he died in the last, like between the last movie and this one, he died in service in Vietnam, which takes place like a little bit before the events for the film. And that caused a really serious strain in Indy and Marion's relationship. And also Marion is here for a final scene. And I gotta say, like, the way they handled that situation, I'm not gonna say it was good or bad. It would have just happened, and I gotta say it makes sense to do that. I guess Shia LaBeouf wasn't back for the movie, but it's not something that distracts me. But I feel like that situation with Indy and his wife Marion, which basically they reconcile at the end, was really well done. I feel like their relationship, which is basically goes all the way to the very beginning to Raiders of the Lost Ark, ends in a very amazing way. But I think I'm getting ahead of myself. That's already explaining the ending, so let's go back to the plot. So over the course of the movie, you also meet another character, Jürgen Voller, which is played by Mads Mikkelsen, and I gotta say it's a fantastic villain. And also, one thing I gotta explain about the villains in these movies is that basically they all follow like kind of the same formula in a way, but it's not bad. It's basically Indiana Jones has like this very specific formula, with the exception of Temple of Doom, which is very different from the rest of the movies, which is basically Indy and basically the other side characters finding clues, traveling all across the world, trying to find this like special artifact. And the bad guys kind of always know where they are at all moments. So basically, I don't know if they can teleport or what, but it happens in this movie too. Like, for some reason, Jürgen Voller and his goons always know where Indy is. Like, he would go like halfway through the ocean in order to explore a sunken ship, and they immediately know where he is. They find him exactly where he is. And that just seems like so ridiculous. I was actually laughing in the movie. I was like, yeah, they can't really exactly know where they are at all times. But they actually did. But before I say it's a complaint, I gotta realize that that kind of happened to some extent in some of the other movies. For example, in Raiders of the Lost Ark, it happened in The Last Crusade. So it's not really like a problem with the movie. It's just kind of like the way these Indiana Jones movie worked. Also, the artifact itself, the Dial of Destiny, was a really interesting plot element. And at the end of the movie, this is also spoiling the ending a bit, but basically they travel back in time. They go to Archimedes this time. So basically Archimedes designed the Dial of Destiny to make sure someone who found it immediately traveled back to his time period and saved them from an invading army. And I gotta say that plot element was very interesting. It's also very crazy, but I think Indiana Jones is no stranger to craziness. For example, in the last movie, we had freaking aliens from another dimension, the Ark of the Covenant. Like, these are all like really insane, fantastical plot elements. So it wasn't like out of place. I just thought it was really amazing, especially with the ending where Indiana Jones actually meets Archimedes and he wants to stay in that era. So I thought it was really interesting, and it really pays homage to the spirit of Indiana Jones, which is like this adventurer who like is passionate about archaeology, about history, and meeting one of his idols, Archimedes, he realizes like, wow, I want to stay in this like era. But after that, Helena punches him and like manages to return him to his own era. So I think like either ending would have been fine. I thought like an ending where Indiana Jones stayed with Archimedes would have been a really interesting and basically amazing finale for his character. Like, I wouldn't have complained. I feel like it's similar to the John Wick 4 ending, where either ending, like without spoiling much about that movie, would have been really good for the fans. I think like either one would have been amazing, and it's the same with Indiana Jones. But the ending we get is basically he goes back in time, like back to the present moment, and he basically ends up with Marion again. So it is like unclear if they like return the relationship to back to normal, but I gotta assume that it is. And it just gives us a really happy ending for Indiana Jones. I feel like it's a really good movie. Honestly, I don't think anything is gonna top the original trilogy. I think there's something special about those three movies that is pre all the franchiseification of media that just is very special and full of magic. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull also feels very like interesting, but not as great as though that one. This one feels more like a half like continuation and also half another movie they just made for more money, for capitalizing on Indiana Jones property, especially after Disney acquired the property. But it still also feels like a send off for the character. I mean, I guess like Harrison Ford is like too old to play the character now. I don't think they're gonna make like 5 sequels in the future, or basically like lend the character of Indiana Jones to another like character that like supplants them. I feel like that would be a very bad idea. So I guess this movie, if it is truly the end of the franchise, is a perfect send off for the character. And I just liked it. I feel like at the end of the movie, I just was happy that I saw it and that it ended the way it did. Kind of sad that it was the last one because I grew up with this character so much, but I feel like it's a good movie. So it has like kind of a lot of flaws. Not as like, I feel like it's kind of like on the same level of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, maybe a little bit better than that one, but I still liked it a lot. So I'm gonna give it a 72 out of 100. Yeah, I just enjoyed it, and yeah, I'm a really big fan of Indiana Jones. So yeah, thanks for watching the review, and I'll see you guys next time.